Well, hey there guys, gals, and other pals. Today is actually pretty funny, as I was busy working on a video talking about a unique build which got buffed with the Walking Dead chapter, but Behavior decided to spoon feed us with their dev notes on the next patch, so I suppose that's kind of cool, I guess. Now, it's important to note that when it comes to the dev notes, we never have exact numbers. Instead, we are working on the mystical form of vague description. That being said, I will do my best to explain everything about the patch in as simple of a way as I can. What I think is good about the patch, everything that I think is bad, and everything that I think is overall pretty neat. As I say this, I also think it's important to note that this patch is big. Like literally, there's so much to talk about that players will experience whiplash from this current patch versus what is coming to the PTB. As I say this, however, it's important to note that these are my initial thoughts on the base design of things being changed, similar to how I designed my video on the animatronic months ago, and so my thoughts may change over time as Behavior reveals more. With all this being said, let's start the video with...
I hate this channel.
No! No!
When it comes to Anti-Slug, this has always been something that is difficult to readjust, as slugging is sometimes a necessary action to do. I talked about it more in my Legacy of a Chapter video on Bill when covering Unbreakable, as Behavior actually attempted to add a base kit Unbreakable into the game years ago. The problem with that system was that it did not take into account how necessary it was to perform slugging, and as a result killers like Oni, Trapper, and Twins were punished, while killers like Nurse and Blight didn't really care as they were speedrunning the game. This new system I can easily see from Behavior has learned a lot from its predecessor's mistakes, and does a lot of really nice things, but still has some elements I can't help but worry about. Before getting into the nitty-gritty, let's talk about how the system works first. Survivors will now passively recover and are granted the ability of moving and recovering while in the dying state, but the survivors will not be able to fully recover immediately. They are only granted the ability after 90 seconds pass, and during this time their crawl speed increases too. Long story short, they added tenacity into the survivor's base kit, and immediately I am seeing some scary elements to the system. Before talking about the bad, let's discuss the good, and that's that 90-second timer. I appreciate that Behavior learned from the old Anti-Slug system with how oppressive base kit Unbreakable was for the average killer, as in some instances, slugging was a necessary action. If there are two survivors who had flashlights on the ready and were waiting to go for a pallet save, it's a no-brainer the killer would need to leave the downed survivor to chase them away. But as I say this, it is also annoying for survivors to deal with killers who purposely slug games just to spite people. The system takes a middle ground approach with how it treats Anti-Slug, as it realizes it can be necessary to perform, but it also wants to punish players who use it as a form of disruptive play. What scares me about the system is the fact that survivors can move and recover at the same time. Tenacity has always been a perk that I believe was slept on by most of the player base, as being allowed to crawl and recover is a very deadly thing, especially when you have survivors who have anti-slugging tools, which Behavior has introduced and buffed in a plethora of ways over time. As survivors now have the ability to crawl and recover, players with We're Gonna Live Forever will need to close less distance, Plot Twist got buffed even further, perks like Boon Expo are now more lethal, and Twins players will fear Power Struggle even more. Now it's important to note that Behavior have said they adjusted several perks that revolve around recovery, but we don't know exactly what they plan on doing, as they didn't list the perks that are getting changed or how they're getting changed. That being said, I do believe the system has been cooking at Behavior HQ for some time, so I wonder what they will do with the perks, which I will happily talk about next week. But there is one more element that I worry about for the killer players, and that is unintentional slugging. One of the biggest flaws killers like Twins or Oni have is that their powers promote the need to slug to go for snowballs, but as a result these players can sometimes forget where survivors were slugged. It's a very unique problem, but I suspect it's only going to grow as survivors now crawl faster over time. One potential change I would like to recommend is making Deerstalker partially base kit, specifically by providing a 16-meter aura read on downed survivors. I believe this would be a nice change for killers, especially newer players who can sometimes lose their survivors accidentally. Plus, it would make Plot Twist more risky as a perk, and really could use that risk. Now onto the elements of this change that I find really cute, and that is the fact that Behavior added a system for custom games to turn it off. I really appreciate Behavior acknowledging their comp player base and recognizing that they work on a fixed set of rules. As a result, this new system could be abused in many ways for how they work there, so what better way to help resolve the issue than by turning it off completely? It's something I would really like to see more from Behavior when it comes to customizing the custom mode, and it seems Behavior want to toy with the system a little more, especially as they follow with this idea with the new anti-tunnel system that we will discuss shortly. Overall, I do like the approach the Anti-Slug system is coming from, but I think there are some worrying elements to it. There is a lot for survivors to help make the experience less annoying, but the update does very little with helping killer players who need to slug for alternative reasons. Although the timer is a fantastic change, I worry that the anti-slug perks can get out of control, but we don't have specifics to it yet. We will be getting them next week. That being said, I do at least have hopes that the system could see the light of day without too many adjustments, unlike the next system I am going to discuss. When I saw Behavior shotgun my favorite character out of existence, I believe that change was overkill, but after reading the anti-tunnel system Behavior just added, this is just avant-garde. There is a lot to talk about with this system, and a lot of it is really perplexing, but to help simplify it, we are going to go from the top. Firstly, when killers hook survivors, the player HUD will no longer show what survivor has been hooked. There will be no notification for the killer on where or who got unhooked, and there won't be an immediate display of who was unhooked for a few seconds. This system is disabled when the last generator is powered. On one hand, I do see where this system is coming from, but on the other, I find it does so in a really strange way. Let's break it all down into simple chunks. Firstly, there will now be less information on the killer's screen, which I do not like. I understand why Behavior removed the notification on where a person was unhooked, as it means that the killer will be less likely to return there, but the other two elements are really strange. Removing the survivor visual of who you just hooked is really awkward, especially if you are going against multiples of the same survivors with the same cosmetics. This was one of the best ways to see who you had hooked, and Behavior just decided to make the guessing game even more difficult. If I had to guess why Behavior decided to go with these changes, I guess it's to prevent the killer from looking towards their HUD to see the moment the survivor is unhooked. But even then, that feels really unnecessary. But then again, I have seen players do pettier things before. Additionally, it really hurts the killer players who use the information to instead go for the unhooking survivor, specifically in situations where the killer players were attempting to find new chase targets. I guess that means Floods of Rage will see more play? But it doesn't really impact me because I normally ran in about 75% of my games to begin with, but I am glad to see its stonks increasing over time. As I am saying this, there is at least something to help alleviate this problem, which I will get to shortly. The second part of this new system is that the killer will only be notified of who was hooked moments after the unhook, which I am gonna be honest does not sound that great until you read a little further into the patch notes. Skipping this segment of the changes, Behavior reveals a new system where killers will be shown with a unique UI the survivor who was recently unhooked, which I will use Hound Sense as a visual aid, as Behavior decided to not post what it looks like. Additionally, if the killer were to fetch a unique hook, they are given a couple of benefits, these being haste for a short time, bonus damage to the next generator kick, and an aura read on the remaining survivors who have hook states that are equal to or less than the survivor who was hooked. I actually really like this system. There are genuinely killer players out there who go out of their way to go for fresh hooks, and as a result these changes actually buff them, which is fantastic. These forms of healthy play should be rewarded, as killers are going out of their way to give all the survivors moments of chase interaction and moments of calm. That being said, there is a big reason why I used Hound Sense as a visual aid, as I want to briefly talk about visual clarity. We don't know how the system for unhooked survivors will look like, but I do want to bring up that for new players, they may be confused by what the system means. We already know this with the obsession mechanic, as there are a great number of players who are still confused by what it does. Same with the yellow hook tick from Shoulder the Burden. It's all very confusing to read, and as a result, a new player may accidentally believe they should target the player with the unique UI rather than ignore them. Now it all depends on how the UI system looks. If there are flashing red lights saying "Do not hook," then it may be okay. But it can still be easily confused or misunderstood if not handled properly, as Behavior's UI can be quite perplexing at times. After all, we still live in a time where people do not know what Skull Merchant does, even after Behavior nerfed her into being Woman with Claw with the occasional undetectable. I also want to note that the benefits fetched from unique hooks are reduced specifically for Nurse, Blight, Hillbilly, Dracula, and Ghoul. It is great that Behavior are not rewarding the S-tier club any more benefits, while I also find it really funny that they are excluding them to a degree. As the French one said, "Eat the rich!" Moving on, we also got some adjustments to the already existing form of Anti-Tunnel, that being the base kit BT, which I talked about more in my Legacy of a Chapter video on Bill. And I think I just said that earlier, but it's still worth noting, as I find the video fits quite nicely with the changes. I also just want more people to see it, as I would love more feedback on how to improve upon it. Anyways, the changes are being additive in what we are getting, as now survivors who are unhooked continue to gain endurance and haste, but also gain Elusive, a new stats effect which is just the ultimate form of stealth. Hidden scratch marks, pools of blood, grunts of pain, and even aura reading prevention, all elements that exist within other anti-tunnel perks, and I think it's pretty neat. Sadly, it's only in the unhook, and not in any of the perks in the game, but Behavior have said this is to test out the status effect to fine-tune it, and later integrate it into certain perks. I could easily see this being added into parental guidance and low profile, as these things are already 3/4 of the status effect. Going back to the anti-tunnel system, survivors will also lose collision with fellow survivors and killers, allowing them to pass by killers who are body blocking. Lastly, survivors cannot be detected by Killer Instinct, because Legion was just that much of a problem, I guess? But they also see the killer's aura for a short time when they are nearby. These changes are all removed when performing conspicuous actions, and everything except the haste and endurance are removed when the last generator is powered. Overall, I really like the adjustments here. The body block removal is fantastic in situations when the killer wants to be really mean, with basement plays early on, and the inclusion of Elusive is great at rewarding stealth play and helping to make the killer lose track of you. And most of all, I really like that these elements are removed when the last gen is powered. It is clear Behavior want the endgame to be the moment where killers are allowed to clean up, so anything that's more mean from their playstyle is fair game. Overall, the changes have been really nice. And then Behavior decided to really take a nosedive into Legion's collection of cold dirt. I'm gonna be honest with you, Chief. If Behavior wanted to remove tunneling from the game, then they have really done it with these changes. Upon a survivor leaving the trial, either upon being sacrificed or moried, and the killer has yet to reach 6 hook states, then all remaining survivors gain a repair boost. Additionally, if a survivor is sacrificed or moried at any point, then the killer loses the ability to regress generators or block them. Long story short, if you tunnel a survivor, you are going to get literally curb stomped by the hammer of Thor. Now, unlike the other changes, which I really like, this system has so many problems that I worry just how dangerous it can be for killer players. First of all, we need to talk about numbers, as this is where it can become very deadly for both sides if they are too much. Let's say all survivors gain a 50% repair bonus when one survivor dies. It now places a very large threat on the killer to not go for the active tunnel, but now the survivors have something mean they can do, especially in swift play. That death hook survivor is now a moving meat shield that can distract and get in the killer's way, and if the killer decides to hook that survivor, they are now punished with their regression options being removed and survivors having a repair bonus. Now, as I said, this all depends on the numbers, and Behavior have yet to reveal what will happen. The repair bonus can be something as stupid as 50% down all the way to 2, but the point still stands. If the reward for survivors is too high, then Swifts can abuse games by using the Death Hook survivor as a meat shield to intervene, and with the anti-slug options being added, they can recover and go towards teammates to help recover and repeat. Now, it is important for me to note that I do not think this is something that will happen. Instead, it's something that could happen. Swifts and how they utilize abusive elements have always been a wild card. Now, although this form of play sounds ridiculous, we have actually seen this type of playstyle before. Hens actually did a really interesting video on this with using No Mither as a tank build for solo queue, and with Conviction being added to the game, it can become even stronger. Now, Behavior have talked about adjusting certain perks, but I can still easily see disruptive forms of play like this manifesting if the benefits are too much. If Behavior do somehow find a good balance where this doesn't happen, and they do end up nerfing the perks to promote this form of play, there is one other problem with the system, that being killer-specific issues. Trapper and Hag in particular will be punished by the system by survivors who actively fall into their traps. These killers are designed to punish survivors who make mistakes, but with this system, they are now the ones being punished. If a random survivor is called out several times, these killers cannot simply just place them on a hook anymore, else they face the wrath of giving survivors a major boon while punishing themselves, as trap killer builds are always loaded with slowdown and gen blocking. Additionally, Onryo, Pyramid Head, and Myers get punished by the system too, as they can mori survivors upon reaching certain requirements. What is meant to be a system that punishes disruptive forms of play can easily turn sour depending on particular killers who are playing with what Behavior gave them as their base design. Now, as I am saying this, does this mean that these killers are unable to function? Well, to a degree. Trapper and Hag will be completely destroyed by survivors who make tons of mistakes, but you could make the argument that the game is already won for you at that point. Onryo, Myers, and Pyramid Head are the same logic. The survivors made too many mistakes, and so it's pretty much a winning game for you. As I am saying this, there are also the games where you won't get an instant mori, where survivors will have some brain cells to look at the floor. In those moments, the system can be really nice, especially with the fresh hook system. I am still raising the concerns though with these particular killers, as they can accidentally trigger the penalty for playing the game and pushing towards their typical gameplay style. It's a difficult situation to talk about, and it's one I suspect Behavior recognize themselves, and as a result they are slowly adjusting in the background while they see how these killers play out over time with the new system. As I am saying this though, there is clearly one killer who could pop the system much earlier than others, which is why he got reworked. I am of course talking about Myers. I'm gonna be honest with you all. Behavior just made Pig 3.0 with a killer who's 1 year older than her, and I find it both funny and disheartening. Myers got a massive rework to his kit, one that I suspect was done with the anti-tunnel system in mind, and as a result there are a lot of changes here that show off a lot of painting over annoying elements to his gameplay. Myers is now a stance swapper, similar to Onryo, where he can switch between Stalker mode and Pursuer mode. Stalker mode is the one mode we all know and love him for. He moves at 105% move speed, is undetectable, and can stalk survivors. Pursuer mode is his chase mode, but with a few added benefits. He moves at 115% move speed, has a 24-meter terror radius, and has increased bonuses to vaulting, kicking, stun reduction, and all of the costs of being unable to stalk. That being said, his exposed has been removed from the kit, instead has been moved into a new power called Pig-2.0, Slaughtering Strike. It is tied to his old Evil Incarnate ability upon reaching maximum stalk. He can activate it at any time to increase his terror radius to 40 meters, and increase his vaulting speed even further. As for the Pig-2.0, he charges up his blade while slowing down his move speed, and then he will power walk at a brisk pace to one-shot a survivor who is hit by it, or instantly breaking a pallet that he runs into. It is important to note that he can activate the dash at any time while charging up, as the charge bar impacts how far he will go. Also, his Mori is in his base kit now, but can only be performed when a survivor is on Death Hook. Stalking has also gotten a lot of adjustments too with the rework, as now there is no longer any limited stock points. The range is now reduced to 32 meters and isn't distance based. And Myers gains less stock when moving but moves faster while stalking. Overall, memes aside about the Pig Dash 2.0, I actually really like how the rework was handled. Myers was a killer who was really difficult to discuss when it came to balance, as Myers without Tombstone was a stealthy M1 killer who could carry a one-shot, while with Tombstone he was one of the most frustrating in the game. As I am saying this, I also have to admit I really did not like Myers' gameplay from a survivor's perspective either. There was no real skill to a killer just holding a one-shot in their pocket, especially when there was very little you could do about it. Ghostface is a much better character at handling the one-shot, as instead of placing it on everyone, he places it instead on the player who made the mistake. But even still, that person who made the mistake can still recover in a few ways. Myers did not care, and it still follows with the rework. It now just takes a little extra finesse to use it. As I am saying this, I am also happy that Behavior reworked Tuft of Hair to revert Myers' rework for the people who preferred the M1 grind set. Although it is frustrating to see another dash killer in a year of nothing but dash killers, and animatronic, I am overall happy with most of the direction. I do think it's a little disappointing Behavior removed the distance-based stock system, as that would reward stealthier Myers players rather than Myers running into players and watching them in their faces. But I suspect Behavior will adjust that later on. Long story short, it's a really good rework to place a visual form of skill expression, but maintains the identity of Myers, which I believe was the most important part about him. Now that Myers is done, we got a few more updates to cover, these being to the Clown, Unknown, Dracula, Ghoul, and Oni. And unlike Myers, these ones are much easier and faster to cover. Clown's changes from last time failed at enhancing his skill expression, instead made Clown fall to Ghoul's territory, and so Behavior doing some course correcting. The timing of activation is going up for the yellow bottle, while the purple slowed linger duration is going to go up too. Although I do like where this is going, I suspect players are still going to continue with the yellow bottle spam. The big problem with Clown's changes from last time was that his purple bottles got nuked, both in the base kit and add-on selection, while with the yellow bottles, it only got better. As a result, Clown players are not really going to bother using both elements when they can instead brute force gameplay with just one bottle type. I do think the changes are great for Clown players who do utilize bottle swapping, but I think Clown really needs an add-on pass to promote the bottle swapping gimmick rather than just promoting the yellow. Unknown is next, and he got a decent number of quality of life adjustments. Survivors damaged by the UVX will gain a longer timer compared to the now 6 seconds, the movement speed recovery from teleporting was increased, and his vertical camera range was increased. Some of these add-ons also got adjustments, but I suspect these nerfs are to add-ons that affected these values as compensation. Overall, some really nice changes, but I do suspect that camera change will be the one that these players will love, as it now allows for some really nice shots compared to before. Dracula got a sizable number of changes, most of which are redistributing some of the power of wolf form into his other two transformations. Vampire form now has an extra pillar, the cooldown will be reduced, the move speed will be reduced too, but he will now move slower a little longer after using the Hellfire. Wolf form now takes longer to charge the pounce, and send orbs will drop less frequently. Lastly, his bat form got buffed to have better movement controls, and several of his add-ons were adjusted. I suspect it's similar to Unknown in what add-ons were tweaked, but I gotta be honest, I am surprised at how tame the changes were for Dracula. Wolf form is the mode that was the most frustrating to loop against, as he is working with a shorter height, and as a result, I do like the fact the power budget was moved to the other two forms. Hellfire is a surprisingly nice ability to play against as a survivor, as the hitbox can be dodged a lot easier compared to something like Pyramid Head's Rites of Judgment, and the bat form getting better movement is just nice quality of life. I don't think Dracula will see too much loss in strength with the adjustments, but I do think the changes were justified. Ghoul is next, and it's only one small thing, one teensy weensy little change that I think a lot of people are going to really appreciate. That being, Behavior finally grew a brain cell. They changed how the Kagune leap now works, as when you grab a survivor and transition into a vault, Now the survivors gain full momentum when the vault starts, rather than when the vault ends. I am gonna be honest, I am surprised at how long it took Behavior to make this change, especially considering how much it was complained about ever since his release. Ghoul has quickly grown as the newest punching bag for survivors to cry about, and as a result their mates are worried that he will receive the Skull Merchant treatment at some point. Although I do understand where they are coming from, I believe they will be just fine, because unlike Skull Merchant, the Ghoul at least makes Behavior money. Okay, all jokes aside, I do believe Behavior are at least looking at Ghoul and are attempting to target some of the pain points. I suspect Behavior are going to treat his balance like Doctor back when Castlevania dropped, as they will be dropping smaller patches that target particular elements that could be better, and others that could be tuned down. Ghoul is one of the most popular killers in the game. I don't think Behavior are going to shotgun them to the ground just yet, and are instead going to be more surgical in updating him. This is a long-winded way of me saying, the change is good, please do more to this white-haired weeb Behavior, please and thank you. He is busy following me and I don't know what to do about it. Oni is last, and this is a very small change to give him more blood when hooking survivors. Behavior explained the reason behind it is to help reduce the punishment of the Anti-Slug system, and to that I say, yeah, I can see it. Oni is not really a killer who's crying out for too many changes, so something small like this is pretty solid, especially as his snowball can be impacted by the anti-slugging system. It's a nice change, one that I wonder if Behavior will do a similar thing to the other killer impacted by the change. Overall, this patch is very big, but I'm going to be honest with you all. I actually really like the approach here. There are a number of things that can easily go wrong with this patch, whether it be numbers, systems that fall apart, or simply how players adapt to the new systems. But I really do like what Behavior have cooked here. There is clearly a lot of heart placed into making the game more enjoyable to play for survivors, and killers who play with more healthy strategies, and the changes to the killers feel really nice too. That being said, not everyone got changes to help with the introduction of these new systems, and I suspect it's going to really hurt them badly. But I do suspect Behavior know this. I think they just wanted to add something to promote healthier gameplay first, and then over time look towards the killers who were impacted the most with some good changes. But at the same time, I am kind of scared for what killers get reworked with this approach. Like, I understand Myers unlocking the power to power walk, but does this mean that we're going to get Trapper with roller skates and Skull Merchant the ability to fly on her drones in 2026? Although cool sounding, I would much rather like some killers who are more slow and strategic every once in a while. That would be nice Behavior. That is all I gotta say for the dev notes. I'll see you all when Behavior posts the numbers, the perk updates, and the new characters, which I hope I really do like, next week. Good luck in your trials, everyone. You will need it, especially once this patch comes out. Oh, and by the way, Lore is back in the game. I'm sure Pixel will greatly appreciate that returning. Finally. After crying about another Dash killer entering the game and Behavior not thinking about power struggle with the new Anti-Slug changes.